Okay, today we're talking about social and environmental education. We're going on with sustainability, one of the cross-curriculum priorities. Small quote there for you. Surveys actually say, and there are repeated surveys that say that this is the area, environmental education is the area that children and adolescents want to learn about the most. In 2008, I conducted a survey in the Tuggeranong Valley. South Tuggeranong Valley. We surveyed 1,000 children, and the ratio was 4:1 wanted to learn about this area as their first priority. So it's something of major interest to children and adolescents. What's sustainable development? It's development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And we do have the 3 pillars of sustainable development: social, economic and environment, and how they go together. And if they work well, and we do get the balance right, you do get the notion of sustainable in the middle. But I'll leave that diagram for you to look at a bit more. Okay, so how do we teach this? Well, often sustainability isn't taught as a once-off lesson, especially in humanities and social sciences. We actually teach it within lessons in a unit of work. So we might pick a topic, water conservation, and we would teach it over a term or something like that. Where we start, this is your curriculum knowledge. Where we start, we always start at the level of teaching about, and I'll go into each of these areas in a minute. We start with about. So we're teaching about the environment, about ecosystems, things there. Then we take students out into the environment, or we immerse them in the environment. There's a reason for that. And then we get to our civics and citizenship component where we act for the environment. And you, over a term, you would go through a sequence of lessons that do that sort of thing for students. Why? Okay, about has a specific focus. It's focusing on your knowledge, your understandings, and often some skills. But that's what it's about. And it is your science stuff, it's your SOS stuff coming together. So it starts with place, geography. It starts with your geographical concepts, and it also goes to your scientific concepts or literacy. And it's the cognitive domain, so that's what you're working on there. Where do kids get stuck? They actually get really stuck in this, whenever you're dealing with the science concepts, it's what you hear about when you're studying science education here. What Ian and other tutors and lecturers are highlighting to you as pedagogical content knowledge carries over when you're looking at it in the notion of sustainability. They also get stuck with their geographical concepts. Remember last week I was talking about nested hierarchies? They get stuck there. Okay, they get stuck with understanding things, so you start with their world and move it out. So it's the same spot. The same spot is where they get stuck now. So they experience difficulties with those concepts. So I did say everything starts with place, so children actually need to understand place, how landforms come together to create a spot, a place where ecosystems can go, where ecosystems exist and how they operate together. Okay? So you've got to talk about that first with them. Then that leads into your study of environmental issues. Marilyn Flair in 2000 did a study out at Hall Primary School, and she looked with young children from the preschool through to 6th grade. And young children actually comment on tangible things when they're talking about acting for the environment or environmental issues. So they see things like raking up the leaves as helping the environment. They see other things like keeping the city tidy as helping the environment, and helping people who are sick as helping the environment. So they get the tangible things. So you have to help them get those scientific and geographic concepts so they can see beyond the tangible and actually move in a different spot. And what was clear in that study was that most of the younger children and most of the older children had not framed the environment as an ecosystem, and therefore they didn't have sufficient understanding of environmental concepts to actually translate their own concerns for the environment into actions, which is what you want to do in this area. And there are numerous studies that have replicated Flair's findings over the years. She also found that from young children are very optimistic about environmental futures. As we get to 6th grade, they're pessimistic about environmental futures. Not all, but a lot of children are. And we'll hit on that a little bit more in a minute. This is the fun one, because you're working on the affective domain. It's a lot of fun. You want the kids to experience the environments that you're talking about. You really do. So it's your hands-on stuff. It's the fun. So it's getting out in the school grounds, nearby grounds, excursions to a certain place. It's recreating the environment in the classroom if you can't get out and about. Kovalik actually says there are 6 types of learning, and the top one, being there, is the best one you can have. If you're actually there, your learning's deeper. If you can't be there, immerse it. So you would have walked into, some of you would have had the opportunity to walk into or be a part of a classroom where they've recreated pond-like environment or desert-like environments in the classroom. That's immersion. So you're doing that. You also then have hands-on, the real thing, so you're getting your artefacts in there. Or hands-on representational items like models of things. Can you see where videos and books come for learning? It's interesting, isn't it? Down there. And then symbolic notations, the last one. But being there, immersion. And that's why a lot of children don't have difficulty within the environment, because they're actually out there doing it. They're playing around in the environment. The final area, 4. Acting for the environment. This one's a tough one. You get the tough at the either end. When you start with about, your geographic and scientific concepts, and the 4, the acting. Because what you're trying to do in this area is bring the cognitive and the affective together to promote citizenship. That's really what you're about here. It focuses on students taking action for protection or conservation of the environment. That means they need to develop skills in action. They really do. And there are ways of doing that. It's your civics and citizenship literacy. It's also your values education, because you are working on student values about the environment. So it's your values education here. Where do they get stuck? Pedagogical content knowledge. The big spot is actually bringing the cognitive and the affective together, because you're promoting certain values in the classroom through the curriculum and what you're asked to do. These may not necessarily be the values that are held at home. So you've got that conundrum coming in there, that tension. So you'll have to face things there. You've got, in some instances, children, I would say, in experience and from research, most children do care for the environment in various ways, but you will get that odd 2 or 3% who don't. This is really not something they see as important. So again, you're working on values there, because you are mandated to teach sustainability. So you're working on that there. You're also working on the fact that where kids come unstuck here, where they get the biggest difficulty is in this idea of an action paralysis. Okay? They sometimes see the problem as so big they can't act because they're scared of it. It's so big, what can one person do? So they just freeze. They don't think it's worthwhile acting. There's that one. There's also the fact that researchers in the 90s and Maryland's again in the 2000s, they really have found that the children, as they get older, very optimistic young, but as they get older, possibly more capable of wider action, they tend to be more pessimistic about the outcome and about environmental futures. And there was research done with 11-year-old children, and the researchers were actually shocked at the depth of fear of the future that these children held, of the despair about the state of our planet and their bleak predictions for their own nation, Australia. Kids predict all sorts of catastrophes. They hear about a tsunami in one place and they imprint it here, straight away. They hear about blizzards in another place and they can be living in the Northern Territory and they imprint it here. So we're dealing with that all the time as teachers. Okay? When the planes hit the Twin Towers, there was a school over in WA of Indigenous children who had the mail plane come in every week. But all night it had been on about the Twin Towers and the next day, when they heard the mail plane come in, all the kids went under their desks straight away, all but a couple, because they hadn't associated that noise with the mail plane, they'd actually associated it with the Twin Towers in America. So you're dealing with that sort of thing. They imprint it straight into their place. That's why we start local and go from there. We also had a study by Colin Fines, Lee and Sykes and Yekin, and they looked at 16 and 17-year-olds and found the majority of the young people expressed a deep sense of frustration with their own actions, pessimism, and they therefore decided it was easier to not act because they didn't know how. And this is going to be your biggest thing when you're teaching for sustainability. Okay. Young kids, 10 years and up, hold a very pessimistic attitude as well. And they actually, the studies on them, they say the world will be full of greed, materialism and ecological failings, degradation and things like that. So it's a tricky one to be teaching in. You're going to be hitting all those attitudes. So what does it say? That actually there is hope. These recent studies, that if we teach this area well, they will have a far more positive attitude towards environmental futures and they will be able to act. Now, a word of warning on that one, with the fact that we want them to act. It is also very crucial that you not only teach children how to act as a team within the classroom, but you give them opportunities to act as an individual. Because if they don't experience both, they'll get their action paralysis when they're thrown into one or other of the situations. So across the P to 6 years, we tend to plan out that, okay, in preschool, we're going to get them to do a little project that follows on to home, so they're acting as individuals. Come year 2, we're going to get them to do something about their local environment, so it's as a class. And then you change it again. So they have the opportunity to act as individuals and as a group. So they see that it is possible to change these bleak environmental futures that they see as they get older, and actually, yes, they have got a part to play in these futures and do that. I'm on time today. Page said in 91, and I really believe this actually absolutely still applies. It is essential that we as educators start to devise the programs which will impart the knowledge, attitudes and skills. Now, knowledge, going back to what I was saying about that scientific geographic literacy. Attitudes, you are you're working on the affective domain. And the skills, when you're out there acting for your citizenship literacy. Skills necessary for children to feel in direct control of their futures. We need to give them that hope.